this video, we're going to be talking about functions. So if you haven't already, go ahead and open up your IDE and let's get started. Functions are self-contained pieces of code that accomplish a specific task. Functions usually take in a piece of data, process it, and then return some type of result. Once you write a function, you can reuse it over and over again. Functions can be called from inside of other functions, and it makes our code reusable. So we're not typing the same code over and over again. We put it into a function, and we can reuse that function as many times as we want. If you've been following along in our videos, you probably already know, looking at my screen, that we're missing a few things. So for this tutorial, we're going to create an executable program, and we want to try out a couple different ways to use functions. So in Go, in order to have an executable program, there's two requirements: package main and func main. So let's get that on the screen. And we're just going to be printing out to the terminal right down here. So let's go ahead and import our FMT package. And let's go ahead and use it. So we'll do FMT and print ln. By default in Go, everything starts, at least for an executable program, right here with our func main. So we're already using a function. So let's talk about this. The way we define a function is with this func keyword. So we say func. We have to give our func a name. For an executable Go program, it requires us to use the name main. After our function name main, we have these parentheses. All right, now what are these parentheses for? A function can actually take in data or parameters, usually referred to as arguments or args. So if we wanted to pass our function parameters or information, we would put it inside of these parentheses. Function can receive 0 or more arguments. Right now, as we can see, our func main isn't taking in any arguments at all. Let's jump down here and create a brand new function. And I'm just going to we're just going to call it add. We're going to keep it simple. And there we go. So right now, our add function doesn't do anything. We know it can take in arguments. We know it can have 0 or more. For the add function, I just want to add two numbers. We just want to see how does a function receive an argument or a parameter. Now we've already defined our func. We've given it a name of add, and let's go ahead and define some parameters. So I'm just going to say A and B. So this function is going to take in parameters A and B. Now in Go, we actually have to tell the function, this add function, what data type A and B are going to be. Now I'm going to add two numbers. So in order to let Go know that A is going to be a number and B is going to be a number, we have to put the data type. So we'll put a space and then int. And I'm going to do the same for B, a space and then int. Now our function knows its name is add. It's going to receive two parameters, parameter A of type integer, parameter B of type integer. After our parentheses, we have this space right here and then some curly braces. Now, functions typically return some type of information. After our parentheses right here, we have to let our function know what data type is going to be returned. So in this instance, we're going to add A of data type integer to B of data type integer. So we're going to add two integers together. So we're going to return the sum of these two numbers. So right here between our parenthesis and our first curly brace, we're going to let the function know it's going to return a data type of int. So we're receiving an integer, and once we do our logic down here, it's going to return an integer. So let's go ahead and do some logic. We just want to do A plus B. This function receives a parameter of A, which is an integer, a parameter of B, which is an integer, and then we're using it right here, A plus B. Now, in some cases, you may want to put this information into a variable. Now, if you've watched our previous video about variables and data types, we could say X use the short assignment operator and say x equals a plus b. And then we could say y, we'll use the short assignment operator, equals x, we'll use the asterisk for the multiplication, times 2. We could do this a bunch of times, and then we could say return, because we want to return some information, and say return y. But for this example, we just want to return a plus b. I just wanted to show you that you could do multiple steps inside of your function before returning any type of information. But let's go ahead and get rid of this y equals. And we could just say return x. So we're putting our a plus b into the variable of x, and then we're returning x. And we've set up here that our function is going to return an integer, and since we're adding two integers together, x is of data type int. So let's go ahead and use this function in this fmt println. The way we call functions in Go is by the name. So we can say add, because that's the name of our function. We've said that add receives two integers. Let's just do 4, 6. Okay? And my Golang IDE is actually smart enough. It knows that the add function has two parameters. One is called A, one is called B. So it's giving me this little hint right here. A is going to be 4, B is going to be 6. So add is going to pass 4 and 6 right here to A and B. Let's go ahead and run our program and see what happens. So we'll do go run main.go. Pretty cool. So our program just sent 4 and 6 to the add function, which is right here. It received A and B, 4 and 6 of type integer. It took them, put them in the x variable, and then it returned x, which is an integer. Pretty cool. Now we can actually clean this code up a little bit. We don't actually have to put our A and B into this x variable. We can get rid of this, and we can get rid of all this, and we can just say return A plus B. Now let's run our code again. So we have this fmt println, and then we're calling this function of add, and we're providing it two integers. Now the cool thing about using functions is I can use this add function as many times as I want. So if I had fmt println, I could put it here, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do a second time, and we'll do 3 plus 6. And I can do it a third time, and we'll do 2 plus 7. Okay, and we can run this again, and we're just calling, we're saying, hey, go use this add function down here, give it this information, and then print whatever it sends back to me. Let's go run that again. Cool. So we have 10, which is 4 plus 6, 9, which is 3 plus 6, and then 9 again, which is 2 plus 7. So we're able to reuse this add function as many times as we want. This might look like overkill for a simple add function, but sometimes these functions can be 20, 30, 40 lines of code. I've actually seen in other programs functions that are hundreds of lines of code. That's typically the result of a poorly designed application or program. Usually we try and keep these functions short, sweet, and to the point, and very specific. So let's just go over this again. We define our function with func. We provided a name of add. We provided some arguments or some parameters. For this add function, we have parameter 1. We're giving this a name of A. We're telling it that this is going to be of type int. Then we're giving it a name of B, which is also of type int. And then we're going to return a value of type int. And then we do all of our logic inside of our curly braces. Now we can actually clean this code up even more. When you're passing in parameters and they're the same data type, so right here we have type int and type int, we can actually get rid of this first int, and as long as they're in order, A, comma, B, they're both of type int right now. So because we're passing in multiple arguments or parameters and they're all of type int, we don't have to actually list out int, int, int. we can list out our arguments, and at the very end, we just put a space and then int. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and run this again just to make sure. Awesome, and we got the same result. So we were able to clean up our code even more. Now there's another cool thing in Go, and that's named return values. And I want to give you an example of this. So let me get rid of this code right here. I'm going to delete this, and we're going to get rid of our add. Okay, and let's just get rid of this. Now this time I want to do a function, so I'm going to say func, and I'm going to call it rectangle. All right, so we have our func, we have our name, we're providing it our parentheses, so we might pass in some arguments here, and then let's add our curly braces. Now for a rectangle, I want to pass in a length and a width, and we need to let our function know what data type length and width are going to be. So for this, length and width are going to be of type int. We're also going to return a data type, but this time around, I want to return two data types. I want to return the area of the rectangle and the perimeter of the rectangle. So I'm going to receive the length and width. They're both going to be integers. And then I want to return the area and the perimeter. So in Go, you can actually return more than one value, which is pretty cool. Not all languages do that. After these first parentheses right here, I'm actually going to supply a second set of parentheses. And this second set of parentheses is going to be my list of return values. We already know we need to let our program know what data type we're going to return. So we're going to return for this, we're going to say int. But we're going to return multiple integers. I can say area int, and I can say perimeter int. But similarly to these first parentheses, we can list that out the same over here. So we can actually get rid of this first int because area and perimeter are both going to be integers. We can get rid of this first int. So let's do that. And we're letting our function know that we're going to return area and perimeter, both of type int. Previously, we didn't provide a name for our integer that we're going to return. Since we're actually providing names here, we would call this named return values. We can come down here. We've already defined this variable of area, and we can say area is going to be equal to length, len, which is what we're passing in here. We're using the asterisk for multiplication, and then width. So this area right here is equal to the parameter we received of length times the parameter we've received of width. Now we've also provided this other return parameter, so we're also going to return a perimeter. So we can say perimeter equals the length plus width, but we want to multiply it by 2. The perimeter is top and bottom, left and right. So 2 lengths and 2 widths. So we can add these two together inside of some parentheses and then use our asterisk for multiplication and then just say multiply this by 2. And that should give us our perimeter. Now we have to let our function know that we want to return the perimeter. We could say return area comma perimeter. So let's go ahead and try this out. We have our function of rectangle and we're going to return area and perimeter. Now we haven't actually used our function yet. We've created it, but we have to go back up here to our main and we're going to do fmt print ln and we're going to say rectangle. Now my Golang IDE was smart enough to know and suggest rectangle. It knows that there's a named int of len. It knows that there's a named int of width. So it's pre-populating this as an option for me. Even here, it's telling me it needs to receive an len or length of int and a width of int. So let's go ahead and provide it 2 numbers. Now my rectangle is going to be 3 and we'll do 12. Okay, so I've just provided my rectangle a length and a width. Let's go ahead and we'll do go run main.go. Pretty cool. So my area of my rectangle is 36 and my perimeter is 30 because that's the order we provided these. Now I could say we'll copy that out. We'll put perimeter first and then area. Okay, and let's rerun this. And it just flip-flopped my perimeters first and then my areas second. So we can change the order in which we return our parameters. Now, if we just want to use the default, we've listed area first and then perimeter, we can actually get rid of specifying area and perimeter. And now we're just saying return. Return these values that we've created of area and perimeter that we've now given values down here. So let's go and run our function again. Go run main.go. And now we're back to the original order. Because we've specified area and perimeter in this order, Go returns area and perimeter in the same order. Now, if we wanted to, we could come up here and flip-flop these and copy out our perimeter, put that first, and then do area, and just say return, and it should flip-flop. Cool. So if we're using named return values and we're providing multiple return values, in this instance, we're returning two values of the same data type. So we can list out our variable names and then provide the data type at the end, which is int. Now let's just say for some reason we have more than one data type. We're receiving a length and a width of type int. We're returning a perimeter and an area of type int. But maybe for whatever reason, we're also going to have a string. We can just put a comma and say, this is going to be a word and it's going to be of type string. All right. Now we're saying we're going to return a third parameter. We haven't defined it down here yet. So let's go ahead and define it. And we'll say word, because we've already supplied this word and it's going to be of type string. And we're going to set that equal to subscribe now. Returning another variable, so 3 return values, and this time it's going to be of type string and we're calling it word. Let's go ahead and run this again. Pretty cool. So as you can see with a function, we can take in multiple arguments, we can return multiple values, and we can shorten our list of data types when we list them in order. So length and width are both of type int. We can just list out all the same data types together and put int with the last one. We're going to return some values right here, and we can list those all out. Since perimeter and area are both of type int, we didn't have to put int here. We could say int, and that's fine. But if we wanted to shorten our code up a little bit, we only have to supply type int once. And then this last return value of word is type string, or data type string. And we're returning our area, our perimeter, our word. And because we've named our return values, we don't actually have to specify area, perimeter, and word. But we could if we wanted to. You know what? I want to do one more thing. I want to go ahead and show you. Right now we have our func main and we have our func rectangle. Let's go ahead and put func multiply in here. Our multiply func is going to receive a and b, both of type int. We're going to return a type int, and let's just do return a times b. So we have this new function now. We're calling it multiply. It takes two numbers, a and b, both of type int. We're returning an int, and this is our logic right here inside of our curly braces. So we're going to return a times b. Now, let's go up here, and for this area, let's go ahead and multiply. We want to do length and width. So now, if there's more than one place in our application or our program where we need to do multiplication of two numbers, our func main is going to call this rectangle function, which gets us to here. And then we have rectangle, which is going to call another function of multiply, which gets us to here. Let's go ahead and run this. Pretty cool. So we can call functions from within other functions, and we can use functions as many times as we want. So we could use this multiply here. You know what? Let's go ahead and do that. Right here, we have some more multiplication. So let's go ahead and multiply these two values. We're doing length plus width, and we're multiplying it by 2. So we have one value multiplied by a second value. So let's go. We can say multiply, and let's get rid of this, and we'll put a comma, and then let's put our closing parenthesis. So our first value is going to be length plus width, and our second value is going to be 2. So we're going to add these two together and then multiply them by 2. Let's go ahead and try this out. Pretty cool. So we're using a function inside of a function, and we're calling this multiply function twice. That's pretty cool. So we're calling our rectangle function right here, and we're jumping down here and we're saying go process this function called rectangle. We're receiving our length and width, and then we come down here and we want to get the area. So from one function, we're calling a second function of multiply. We're doing some multiplication. We're returning the value and we're storing it here in a variable called area. Then we're doing it again. We're creating this variable called perimeter, and we're doing some more multiplication. We're doing some addition here. We're adding length plus width for our first multiply value, and then we're just providing 2 because we want to multiply it by 2. And we're jumping down here. We're running our multiplication. We're returning our value, so our perimeter value is set, and then we're supplying a last variable of word, and we're just saying go subscribe now. And then we're returning area, perimeter, and word. But we really don't need this, so let's just get rid of that. Since we're using named return values, which is this right here, we're saying there's going to be a named return value of perimeter, area, and string. Let's run this one last time and make sure all of our code's still working. And there we go. I hope you learned something in this video. I hope you learned more about functions and how they work. Go ahead and play around with this. Maybe create one that does divide, or you could even go ahead and put the add function back in and maybe use the add function to do this add right here that we do of length plus width. The best way to learn this is getting in and getting your hands dirty. I can't stress that enough. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notifications, and I'll see you in the next video.